speaking about biases, it's fascinating. I was telling a friend of mine, that we were having you on. He said, man, video games, isn't your audience this and this and this? I go, well, my audience is learners that are fascinated in human psychology. But more importantly, it's just every single pro athlete that I ever trained throughout my career played video games,
Oh,
right?
really?
Oh, I mean, we've had 3 of them on the show, and we asked them, how do you detach, from some of this? I mean, like these people, regardless of sport, this is a grind, and this becomes their livelihood, and they need a way to kind of have an incubation period and a way that they can get away from that. And whether it was Fortnite, whether it was any of the games, I mean, a lot of them that you had consulted with and worked on, and I remember asking them, to your point, I said, what is it about these games? And they said, they're challenging, they're social, they allow, and many of them said it, it's the opposite of the narrative out there. I don't feel like games make me dumber. As a matter of fact, when I'm done playing them, if they're well designed, I feel more relaxed, more focused. I feel like I was able to express myself. Do you feel like that's still a bias societally that we're working through, that video games, don't really offer the cognitive benefit? Well-designed games, of course, ones that are done with. What do you think of that narrative?
So I find that surprising because I felt that a lot when I started to work in games. I grew up with games and I played with my parents. So we played a lot of games, including video games. But then I was surprised when I became an adult and worked on games, and I saw that a lot of people were against, scared about games. But that was 20 years ago. And today it's still the case. And now I'm getting very surprised because games are still in many places not considered as an art form. Like movies can be considered as an art form. We saw that also with comic books. I think it took a while for people to understand, well, yeah, this is an art form, and it's not because you're going to read comic books that it goes against your understanding of books or whatever. So we still very much see that with games. But there's also, there are some problems with games, like with any tech. But the problem with video games is they are at the intersection of technology and art and entertainment. So there's a lot of things to consider, but also some people are going to say like video games are good or video games are bad. It's really as if you were saying food is good or food is bad. Back to paraphrase Dr. Daphne Bavelier, who wrote that in a paper in Nature. You can't really say that. It's going to depend on what sort of food you're eating and how much and why. Is it, because you're stressed out? It's really not the same if you stress eating than if you eat because you find it good and you just eat a little bit and you eat healthy food. It's really the same with games. There are so many different types of games, and it depends on why you play. Do you play to escape, or do you play to to release some stress, or do you play just to entertain yourself, which is because it makes you feel good and because you're going to meet with your friends or you like to be challenged? Depends on the type of game you're playing. It depends on so many things. So it is a bit frustrating to see that video games are still not elevated at the place that they should be, just like any other art form. And we can certainly raise some ethical questions regarding certain types of games, just like we can raise that with any other technology. But overall, yeah, it's neither good nor bad for you. It depends on what you play, how long you play, what types of game you're playing, and is it, are you playing with your friends or
It's a danger of this false dichotomy binary thinking that the world has seemingly got into, right? It's just like my wife and I will watch a show every night just to try to disconnect from work. Otherwise, we'll always create more work for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody saying, oh, I don't watch TV. And I go, well, I think you forget that TV is written screenplay, much like these games. I mean, the thousands of hours people put, I think the last game that I really had gotten into, and it came, admittedly, I had taken a long layoff, but I played Red Dead Redemption, right? And I just remember reading about all the hours of dialogue and the narrative. And some of these games have, I mean, the narrative themselves, if they were turned into screenplays, it's just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And people forget, just like there are books that are terribly written books, there are games that have award-winning narratives. If you just allow yourself to open up to different experiences, but then again, that goes back to implicit bias, does it not?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, but just like anything that is new, and that's the part that really gets me, is it's not that new anymore. I can understand parents when they see their kids playing for long hours. It can be stressful, and of course, if you try to get your kid to stop playing as they're playing with their friends, a very exciting game, it can be weird to see their reaction. So I get the concern of parents that just want what's best for the kids. But I think we can talk about these issues and in nuances and try to make sure that kids still have healthy play and have a little bit of everything. The brain needs diversity, so it's not a problem to play video games. It's a problem if you only play one type of game or only video games all day long. That is definitely not good for your brain. But
Right.
playing games is just like anything. It's also not good to read all day long. You also
Exactly.
need to do other stuff. So yeah, I think it's so present everywhere and it's so successful today that maybe there's more concern, and which I can totally understand. But the problem is this very stereotypical narrative that you hear in the media, and it's like everything is all good or all bad.
Right.
It's really not helping. Like